Hello, Geog 3650 Advanced GIS students here at UVU for spring 2025. This is my first video tutorial for Advanced GIS this semester. In this tutorial, we will briefly go over where I'll post assignments, lab assignments in Canvas, and we'll talk about file management a little bit and get you started with Lab 1. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing ArcGIS Pro background. I've gone in, I've started it up. You can see I've clicked a map, which loads up a new project. The default, right, is to stick these new projects in your documents, ArcGIS projects folder. And that's fine, at least you know where they are, but you're working in the GIS lab on computers that could potentially get refreshed, and so you could lose that information. And so it's better not to be so lazy as just put it there. You probably want to put it in your OneDrive so it'll get synced to the cloud eventually. And so you might click the folder, right? And then go to maybe your profile and find OneDrive and save it there. Okay. In my case, I'll use my Dropbox because I pay for that myself for this class to give an example. But yeah, use your OneDrive. So 2025, I'll put it there. And we're going to then give this a name that maybe makes specific sense. So these new projects, of course, create geodatabases within that folder. All the things that you create within ArcGIS Pro in this project will be saved in that folder. It's better to do this up front than after the fact. Like if you started it by saving to the default location in My Documents and then said save as, it would create a new thing wherever you said save as, but those intermediate files that you may have made in the geodatabase are going to be stuck in that default location first. It doesn't transfer all those over by default. So that creates more work for you later on if you want to fully back up this file. So do this up front. Okay, so I'll call this Toke N. So for my name, lab 1 3650. Okay, something like that. Or you could give it something more descriptive. So this is interpolation, EM lab. Okay. So that's a good way to go for that. Just get yourself started on the right foot every time. You could even create a GIS folder where the default projects always go to that folder, and I would recommend doing that. Okay, so now I'll just show you briefly in Canvas what's going on. So week by week, I have journals and readings up front, supplemental readings, and then assignments and lecture slides. The lab will appear at the bottom of the modules. Generally speaking, all of the data that you need will be in that lab 1 folder. If otherwise, I would tell you that I've linked it out here or placed it on OneDrive or something like that. But generally, it's going to be right here in Canvas for you to get. So I kind of set up these lab assignments as like a poster board or a billboard, basically. I'll link video tutorials. The ones that are sitting there right now are from last year, but I'm starting to update them now with this video. And so I'll replace those with a 2025 version. At the top, we'll see our lab kind of instructions, a document file, and then any data files that you need to download. In this case, there's just 2, and they're both CSV files, basically spreadsheets that you will bring into GIS. So I would go and start by maybe downloading those. You probably want to put those in that same folder And so for me, I just clicked download, and of course they went to my default downloads. So I'll cut those and then go where I was a minute ago. Just always, try to keep things where you think that they should be so you don't get disorganized later. And it's a great idea to take some notes about this. Now, since these aren't GIS files, I'm going to keep them outside of the geodatabase. And yeah, they gave them some weird names because I've done this before. So I'll just modify those names a bit to what they're supposed to be. Yeah, so you can save files such as CSVs and things within in the project file of ArcGIS Pro. The geodatabase you can see is here. If we open it up in Windows Explorer, it doesn't look like much, as you probably know. APRX file, that's if we wanted to open up the project interface, the GUI. We click that. There's other things embedded in here. Better to look at some of those embedded things if you're in Arc Catalog within ArcGIS Pro. But we can see some of what's going on in here. And if you wanted, you could create a new folder, and we could call it outside data, outside of the geodatabase. And I could put those files that I just stuck in here and downloaded in there, just to be even more organized. And then I could open up the lab assignment, and I could download that. Everything wants to go to the default. Let's just open it, and I'll save it to the correct location. So enable editing, file, save as. And then I gotta go find it again. It's a lot of work, right, to keep yourself organized. That's OneDrive. And so, yeah, you should be doing this in OneDrive, but I'm not. 3650, 25. And yeah, so now for all your labs, try to name them with your name up front. This is not the syllabus, so I don't know why it says that. So we'll just call this lab 1. Yeah. You could be more specific on that if you wanted. So instructions are here. I'll just give you the gist of it without reading everything, but you're going to get rainfall point data in those spreadsheets. We have 2 spreadsheets, or CSV files. Utah data 21-22. So those are data at Utah rain gauges across the state for the years 2021 and the year 2022. And then the other one is, it says Utah normals. Normal, another way to say that is averages. And so those are averages over 30 years for those same rain gauges, or at least the ones that have been around for 30 years. So you won't find that, basically when you add those points in, you may get you will get 2 different sets of points. Many of them will be at the exact same location, but probably there'll be less total points in the normals file. And so once you've got those point files with rainfall data for the years and for the long term, those are data at a point. And what we want to do is interpolate, basically infer what the rainfall is on average or in that year across areas where we don't have data. That's our interpolation. And so I asked you to do 3 different types of interpolation on the rainfall and compare them. IDW, which is inverse distance weighting, spline, which is kind of fitting a polynomial curve through the points. So And then the third thing is kriging, which is a statistical fit through the points. There's things that you can tune on all of these interpolations, like how do you weight the distance for inverse distance weighting? How do you tune the polynomial for the spline, which has to go through the data points, but can go negative or positive on either side of it. Kriging, there's tunes within there as well. Now, you won't get into, in this lab, probably all of the details of how you can tune those things. I would start with the defaults and then see how those work relative to each other. And then when you select which of those three you feel is the best for this sort of interpolation, then maybe you could tune it a little bit if you feel like it. You might need to do some research on how to do that best. And so I asked you to first do the interpolation for the 30-year data, and then decide which of the three interpolation methods works best for rainfall, and then apply that to the 2021 and 2022 data. And so then you'll produce several figures comparing those interpolations, and you'll also compare them quantitatively. And I'll make some video tutorials kind of suggesting how to do that. Also, as a part of this lab, there's part 2, which is to bring in a digital elevation model, produce some visualization outputs, such as a slope map, a hillshade map, an aspect map, and to create things like a slope shade or hillshade model, and color it by elevation. So it kind of creates like this digital topographic map that represents topography quite well. And then I also want you to compare how precipitation co-varies with elevation. We should expect, right, from our basic introduction to like physical geography, that you know, as you go up in elevation, you should probably get more precipitation because it's colder. The atmosphere can hold less moisture, and so it should be raining more at higher elevations. And lower elevations, right, it's warmer, and so that moisture will be caught up as a vapor. So you can do that quantitatively, and you will for this lab. In the end, you'll create somewhere between 4 and 5, maybe even 6 figures, depending on how you combine those figures. As you name the labs, the figures, always make sure to name them purposefully with your last name, initial, and then the name of the lab or the name of the figure for the lab. And then for all the figures, make sure to provide captions that aren't just simply hillshade map or something like that. I want to have descriptive, informative captions so that somebody who didn't know about this lab could know what that figure is and what's the purpose of it, what is it showing us. And so these captions should be a few sentences long at the very least. There's also some questions embedded within this lab, and so you should make sure that you're doing your due diligence to answer those questions. And you could embed your answers within the captions of the figures, or you could submit them as like answers to the questions at the end of this document that I have pulled up right here. Okay, I guess one other short thing to think about is like we have these geodatabases in these project files, and whenever you create a default new file within your projects, they will be stored in your geodatabase, and that's great. Working in geodatabases in ArcGIS Pro is an excellent way to manage things like topology, to make sure everything's contained in one place. There's great advantages to working in Esri's geodatabases. However, if you know that you want to pull your data out in a later lab and work in another program such as QGIS, it actually doesn't do a good job of looking inside geodatabases, especially for raster files. And so I am not against keeping your data files outside of the geodatabase as long as you keep them organized. Because sometimes when you're sharing files and things like that outside of Esri, you might prefer to have those outside to save some steps, because otherwise you have to do a whole process of exporting the data, doubling up the data, etc. Okay, so that's my kind of introductory admonishments for downloading, getting started with labs in this class, um, organizing your lab files in OneDrive by saving your projects there upfront, and then naming the files as you're going about it. Okay, so this is video 1. I will stop the video now.